some extra things to do, and by extra I don't mean extra in that sense of the word, but we also share the Lord's table. Don't do that every Sunday, but today we will, and we'll talk about that as we get close to that. But I want to share a message in a continuation of this series of living by faith or driven by fear. We're in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, and you could turn there, open your Bibles if you have it, or your app or pad or whatever, maybe on your watch. I don't know. People have some great technology around here. Joshua chapter 1. We're covering verses 1 to 9, but we're focusing on some in particular. Now, as far as the book of Joshua, historically, it begins where the book of Deuteronomy concludes, just to kind of make that connection. And so we come to this place, and we're talking about Joshua, who had a real doubt problem. Following Moses. Moses has now passed, and Joshua, hello, this is your time to shine. Very intimidating, hard thing to do, hard thing to take on. Oh, by the way, at this part of the journey, we're going to cross the river, and there's not a picnic on the other side, just saying. There's some bad people, and they're not little. You know, they're not kind either. You know, if you've ever played football, you looked at that. You come on the field and you got all the players, you know, here, and then the team walks out and everybody's over 6'5". That's scary. That's when the whole half of our team walked off and went home, you know. So these people were big, intimidating. But Joshua, you got to take the lead. Joshua had some hesitancy about it. I mean, wouldn't you? It was like, Moses, why did you leave me with this? And he said, you know what? It's just not fair, but here we are, and we're going to get this thing going. In verse 9, we see a very familiar passage I want to read and focus on that and then move on. As we talk about doubt, the Bible says, be bold, be strong, courageous. Get rid of all fear and doubt. Something Joshua needed to hear. All of us do. Remember the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So how do we have so many self-doubts? I mean, I think we all believe that. If I were to ask a question, do you really believe that wherever you go, God is there? Because I don't believe a place where God is not. To say it in a different way. So what causes this doubt? Why do we have, by the way, just saying, have you ever had doubt, or is that just me? You've had doubt, right? Absolutely, I've had doubt. Well, there's a lot of things that cause doubt, but two things I think in our passage kind of surfaces. The first thing is when you or I begin to compare our abilities to others, doubt will come in. I mean, you know, whether it's a sport or whether it's a lecture or whether it's a presentation of some sort, when you start comparing yourself to other people, you will immediately begin doubting yourself. I mean, the truth is, more than likely, there's probably someone on the planet Earth that could probably do it faster, quicker, probably. But you could do it. But when we begin to compare ourselves, we don't compare ourselves, we compare ourselves to others, causes the doubt versus reaching out to God who will take us where we're at. But everything is about competition, isn't it? I can't say these burger joints, okay? I probably could, but I won't. But you know, when certain burger joints go into a new area, when one of them comes in, guess what? All the rest of them come in. You think they were planning that? I don't know, probably not. But they are competitive. If they're going to do it here, and they'll build their operation like right next door. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. But that's the way things are. Another thing is that we start remembering our past failures. It creates a lot of doubt. I mean, all of us has failed at something. Maybe school, where I'm not just talking about school, but we failed somewhere. And we feel like God is opening up the door to do something, and then we remember that failure where we just made a mess. And we remember that, and that immediately becomes a place of doubt. I'm no good. I don't have the ability. I've tried something like this before, and I failed. Well, failure isn't final. Never has been. But to us, some of us, failure is final. No, failure is about a wonderful future. But these two things in this at least category causes doubt. So don't let doubts or guilt keep you from being used by God. Because God says, I'm not so concerned about your past as I am the wonderful future that I have planned for you. So get up and go. But we get so stuck in the past. Have you ever driven a car looking in the rearview mirror as you drive? I think I've seen some people who I think are doing that. But just try it one day. Don't tell anybody I told you, but give it a shot. Pull out, go forward, and drive your car or truck by looking in the rearview mirror. Now, there's some probably talented people who could do that. I don't know, but I don't recommend it, just as an illustration. So God really isn't concerned about your past, but isn't it interesting that we want to live there? Because of its hurt, its pain. And the thing is about living in your past is that you don't have a present. You don't have a present tense because you're in the past. And if you don't have a present, you don't have a future because the future leads to the future. Because the present leads to the future. So for all practical purposes, you don't exist. That's what the past will do for you. Get you stuck. You have no present because you're in the past. You have no future because you have no present, because you're stuck in the past. Make sense? I hope so. So, where do we go from here? The second thing I want to say is that, what did God promise in this passage, and really promise to us? So in Joshua chapter 1, in verse 3, God had promised Moses, at least in this passage, three things. He said, I will give you this land, so I will give you every place you go in to the land. It will be yours. These are the promises of God. So, in the midst of our doubt and in uncertainties, God has promised at least three things. He's promised His strength. In verse 5, chapter 1, verse 5, He said, no one will be able to stand against you. Now, He said that to us too. If we're doing God's work, we're moving forward, our greatest fear is, can we do it? Can we afford it? What if we fail? I mean, that is sometimes the first thought off of people's minds. It's not, oh, this sounds exciting, we can do this. But what if we fail? But God has promised to give us strength. The second thing in verse 7, God has promised us success. In fact, it just says clearly, verse 7, you will be successful. Whatever translation you've got, I'm not sure, I may use a different word. Mine says, you will be successful. Now, this is God. I mean, this isn't your next door neighbor. This isn't Gomer Pyle. This is not, Barney Five. No. This is God, who says to you and to me, and he said to Joshua, his strength will sustain us, and I guarantee you success. Now, the success may not be what you think. This sort of, pride about prosperity theology, if you know anything about that, that's not what I'm talking about. That's a bunch of nonsense. God never promised us that. He did promise His presence, He promised us success, and He promised, as we thirdly in verse 9, He promised His presence. He said, I will be with you wherever you go. Now, we either believe that or we not, or we don't. But that's God's promise to us. And if that's true for Him, it's the same God that's telling us, this is what I'll do for you. And the third thing, how do we get there? You've heard this line. I borrowed this. Where God guides, He provides. Nice jingle. It's true. Where God guides, He provides. Because in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, we come to this all familiar passage where it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding, but in all of your ways, all of them, acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. How much more could you ask for? I mean, really, it's exciting. It's like it's not even as good. It's like going and saying, look, do you want this lake house on 20 acres of lakefront property with a house that has been evaluated at probably $2 million? You got all these extras for outside activity, and it's all paid for, and you can live in it. In fact, as you go along, there's an actual fund that will pay for all of your utilities and maintenance. Does that excite anyone? If you're not a lake person, you say, no, they can have it. No, even if you're not a lake person, you still take it, and then you sell it. Make some money. This is better than that. But it's that powerful. He says, look, as you go forward, I'm going to be with you. No one can stand against you. And as you go forward, just trust me. Because where I guide, I will provide. In Proverbs it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Now that's a promise. That's a promise of God. Now the fourth one, this is the last one. This is where it gets all of us. Fifth, the last thing is, fourth, wait for God's timing. See, in verses 10 and 11, then Joshua issued instructions to the leaders of the people there. He said, get ready. Time to go. We're going to cross the river. There comes a time, sometimes we can talk some things to death. Everybody's different, right? But have you ever been with a group, or maybe you got the assignment of planning something, of building something, or a project of doing something, and some people just talk it to death. I mean, have you ever been around that person? I mean, I'm sure not. But people just talk it out. And it's full of doubt. Well, if you want to go do a hamburger cookout thing, what if it rains? This player area floods really bad. You go on and go on. It's like, why don't you just go to your house, sit in the corner, and die? Because you're not going to do anything. But there comes a point. There comes a point that we must stop discussing, stop talking about things, quit thinking about it, and at some point stop praying. If God has already led you, what are you praying for? Because when we keep praying, when God has already shown us, that says, God, I don't really believe you, but I'm going to keep praying until I get the right feeling. If you're waiting for the right feeling, good luck. Feelings are fickle. You can't trust your feelings. We do have feelings, and that's good. But there comes a point to step out despite your feelings, fears, and doubts. I mean, he said, you know what? We've done this before, guys. You remember back at the Red Sea where I sort of parted the water, walked across on dry land. 3 times it said they walked across on dry land. Dry land. Well, at the Red Sea, that's what we did, but we're going to do something a little different. God's good at crossing water. So here we go. This is different. I want you to start walking first. I'm not going to part the water. No. You start walking first, and as you walk and you get to the edge of the water, I will dam the water up so that it will recede, that you can walk across. But first you got to move. First you got to do it. Because he said, this is a test. This is a test to the spiritual leaders, to the people. Can he do it? Can he not? You see, God will never tempt you, but he will test you. Don't think he won't. He will. But not tempt. Big difference. God's not going to tempt you to sin. That's not the nature of God. But God will test. And he will test them. Are you going to stay there? Are you just going to go to the edge of the river and put your feet in it? For me, I just go fishing, Forget about crossing it. What would we do? And some of us are saying, look, I'm getting too old for this water stuff. I'm tired of the water crossing. I'm getting too old. Joshua was 80. We don't have any excuses. We are never, please listen to this. You are never too old to make the rest of your life the best of your life. That's got to soak for a minute. That's for me. We are never too old. Not that any of you are above 32. All of us are 32 and below. That's just the way that is. But if you ever get older, whatever older is, you're never too old that you can make the rest of your life the best. Can you believe that? Okay, now I must admit I struggle with that. Because I'm 37, right? I've told you that. I've been very honest and transparent. And I got to thinking about, God, you mean the best of my life is the rest of it? You mean I haven't done the good stuff yet? I've been very blessed. I've been very thankful for what I've been able to do. And there's some things I did I wish I didn't do. But God, I'm thankful. So you're telling me that instead of, because the world says, once you get to this point, make sure you save all you can and then sit on the can and have enough can money to be able to slide your way right into eternity. God says, I'll provide your need. No big deal. But life is not about here, and I think I'll quit. And so many people say, I've been to church all my life. And I do this in the hospital. I visit. Do you have a religious preference? I was raised this or that. I used to go to church. I don't go no more. I figured it was time for the young folks to take over. And that's true. Young folk, other people, and it's not about old or young. See, that's the problem. We think this is an old thing and a young thing. No, this is a God thing. This is a God thing. Did you see that 100-year-old precious lady in the video? That is incredible. Well, she just had special DNA. I don't know. Maybe she did. But she's there. She didn't quit. Her life was, you got to change gears, not quit. Just shift the gears. You don't have to be going 80, 90 miles an hour. Just shift, slow down, but go. You're never too old. We are never too old to do what God may have as the best and the rest of your life. You begin to find out, what is the rest of my life? If someone were to ask you, what is your purpose in life? What would you say? If someone were to ask you, what is your purpose in life? What would you say? And whatever you would say, do you honestly feel like your purpose has been fulfilled? Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? You know, there came a place in the disciples' life, they didn't know why they were there. They came to that place where they celebrated the Passover, and they went into the Passover, and I got to get this book. And you know, they've done this before. This is nothing new for them. Oh, we can do this. That's easy. So they went into the Passover, and they started doing their own stuff, and they started off very familiar. Barakatah Adonai Elohim. That's good. I got that. Then Jesus began to say, and this is my blood, which is shed. And then everybody in the group is saying, what on earth is Jesus talking about? He's lost it. He's lost what he's talking about. How could he be doing that? Then he taught, this is my body that will be broken for you. Because see, they had this idea that the Messiah was going to come and set up his kingdom. And he didn't. And so at this Passover meal, there was a big change. It was not just this idea of a Messiah coming. The Messiah was sitting at the table. And today, this is one of the reasons that we do what we're going to do. We don't forget this table because we remember what it means. For Jesus, for the first time, though he had hinted a long time ago, by the way, I had Achilles tendon surgery, and that's why I have to do this. I got to thinking, I wonder what those people are thinking. I got walked down like I'm 105 years old. God, what are you doing? What are you saying? And even Jesus said, and by the way, there's one here at the table. He's an imposter. He's going to be a really bad guy, and he was. Later on, the Apostle Paul wrote in the book of Corinthians, this passage. Therefore, he said, when you come together in one place, it is not really to eat the Lord's Supper. It isn't about a Baptist covered dish. We're good at that, aren't we? We're really good. That's a spiritual gift. Spiritual covered dish stuff. Don't use this for a meal, but as we gather around this table, we receive this cup. We receive this gift. And he said here in verse 23, for I received from the Lord what I also pass on to you. On that night, when Jesus was betrayed, the Lord took bread. That they've seen before. That's no big shot. That's part of it. They took bread and gave thanks and broke it. And he said, this is my body which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Are you kidding me? Now, we got to put ourselves in their place. He did all the stuff right in his Hebrew, Aramaic, what he said. Then he said, this is my body. Jesus has absolutely lost it. What's he saying? In the same way, that night, he took the cup, and after the cup he said, this is the new covenant. Do this as often, and as you do, and as you drink of it, in remembrance of me, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. So I'm going to ask, as we prepare ourselves to remember this table, that we be prayerful. Donna will come and play some music. I'm going to ask that our deacons will come forward and prepare our table. And I'm going to ask that you, for the moment, to be in a state of prayer. God, what is it that I need to do? What is it that this Lord's Supper needs to be different for me today, and why should it be? So as we come and we play music, deacons, would you come and prepare our table by removing these cloths, and then